The whole to order at 6:32. Kristen, could you call the roll?
Trustee Burke.
Here.
Trustee Brady is absent. Trustee Brennan.
Here.
Trustee Galante.
Here.
Trustee Glatz.
Present.
Trustee Mueller.
Here.
And President Vandenberg is absent.
So, Trustee Mueller will be participating in this meeting electronically by telephone conference call. He is prevented from physically attending this meeting due to employment purposes. The voice of the absent member participating by telephone conference call must be identified by the other village board members.
Sound check,
Trust-
Mike.
Trustee Mueller?
I am present here from the spot my employer put me, so hopefully you guys can verify my voice with this.
Okay. So, thanks. So, number two. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So consider approval of the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on November 5th, November 12th, and November 18th and 19th of 2019.
So moved?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Thank you, Cindy. Number three, discuss cannabis law. Hannah, you want to take that one?
Sure. So following the November 12th Committee of the Whole discussion on adult use cannabis, as you all know, we posted the survey link for resident input. So we want to briefly go over some of those results. As you know, those results have also been posted online. In total, we received over 2,700 surveys. Roughly 68% of respondents somewhat support / strongly support retail dispensaries. About 66% of respondents somewhat support or strongly support indoor cultivation centers. 66% of respondents also somewhat support or strongly support manufacturing facilities. And on-site consumption had just under 50% who strongly support the use and an additional 9% who somewhat support it. So that's just sort of an overview of the results as they came in. For additional purposes tonight, or for additional informational purposes tonight, we've invited 3 different companies who've contacted the village with an interest to come and speak with you all, provide a little bit of insight into how the facilities are run, what they may look like, et cetera. Solely keeping this for informational purposes, not promoting business interests at this time. So with that being said, we'll start, and I would like to invite Mike Perez and his team forward.
Do you have the present PowerPoint?
EarthMed?
Yep.
Thanks for coming tonight, guys.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Lackey. I'm joined with Mike Perez and Gus Kukutakis. I'm an agent in charge in Illinois Medical Cannabis Dispensary. I'm here with you today to provide you with some basic insight into how dispensaries are operate and how the different dispensaries are set up. There are primarily three different facilities. They're medical, dual use, and recreational. Medical cannabis dispensaries in Illinois currently service medical cannabis patients. These patients are Illinois residents and have received certification from their doctor and meet specific criteria established by the Illinois Department of Public Health. Medical patients are either enrolled in the medical cannabis pilot program or the opioid alternative program. There are strict guidelines on the amount of cannabis patients are permitted to purchase. These allotments are controlled by the state. They cannot be exceeded, adjusted, or altered by dispensary staff. Sales attempts that would exceed a patient's allotment are prevented from being processed by the state's and dispensaries' point-of-sale system. There's recreational dispensaries. Recreational dispensaries in Illinois will service those members of the general public, both residents and non-Illinois residents, 21 years of age and older. Recreational purchasers will also have an allotment that cannot be exceeded. These transactions will also be safeguarded by the state and dispensary's point-of-sale system, which will not allow transactions to be processed that would violate a purchaser's allotment. And finally, there's dual use. Dual use dispensaries are those dispensaries that service both medical and recreational consumers. All current medical dispensaries that were open and operational at the time of the signing of the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act are permitted to apply for a dual-use license. However, local municipalities still have the right to not permit recreational sales at those medical dispensaries located within their jurisdiction. Most medical dispensaries will be dual-use. Facilities are broken down into 3 general areas. There's a public area, a limited access area, and a restricted access area. The public areas of the dispensary are those areas open to the general public. Not all dispensaries have public areas. Public areas generally consist of a small vestibule immediately within the main entrance of the building. The limited access area. The limited access area of a recreational dispensary is the area of dispensaries typically open to those 21 years age older with proper identification who wish to conduct business with the dispensary. These are the areas consultations are performed, non-cannabis merchandise is displayed, and the side of the counter where the purchasers conducted their transaction. The restricted access area. Restricted access area is an area located on the staff side of the counter. This area contains the staff's offices and work areas along with the vault, break rooms, and security rooms. The restricted access area is restricted to registered agents, service professionals, transportation organization agents, department inspectors, and security personnel. There's many ways to design a dispensary, but the 2 most common layouts are what I like to refer to as a currency style or the jewelry store. A currency style model is a style of dispensary where the public and staff are separated by a glass window. Transactions take place between these windows. Cards, ID, currency, and product are exchanged through a small opening at the bottom of the window. With this style, purchasers are allowed to see the product through the glass window while the order is being filled. The currency exchange style window that separates the purchaser from the dispensary staff is also the separating line between the limited access area and the restricted access area. Although product can be seen through the window, purchasers are not allowed to take possession of any product until after the transaction is complete. The jewelry store model is a more open model. The area usually contains glass floor displays and the dispensary the area usually contains glass floor displays throughout the dispensary containing empty packaging. Transactions are conducted at an open counter with no separation for the purchasers. The entire transaction takes place within the limited access area. After the transaction has been completed, a sales receipt is printed in the restricted access area and the product is pulled and bagged. The product is then either provided to the customer on the floor or provided to them through a pickup window. With a limited number of dispensaries set to open in the state, demand is thought to be high. The ideal location would be in a well-lit main street with high visibility and a large parking lot. The ideal size for a dispensary would be between 4,000 and 12,000 square feet. An enclosed garage for receiving shipments would be ideal but is not required. As there is a limited number of dispensaries set to open, we feel that this is going to be a large draw to the area and neighborhood businesses. Allowing dispensaries to operate in a B3 zone on a main street will not only allow for multiple points of ingress and egress to the dispensary, but it'll also allow for the best ease of access for purchasers to the area where they'll be able to conduct their transactions and leave the area without affecting residents. Dispensaries are regulated and inspected by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. An operations and management plan and standard operating procedures are submitted and approved by the IDFPR. These plans and procedures must be followed by all staff, visitors, and purchasers. Failure to adhere to these procedures will result in fines. Currently, dispensaries are allowed to operate 365 days a year from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. However, we don't expect there to be a man for these hours of operation. Currently, most dispensaries are operating between the hours of 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Day-to-day operations of a dispensary are similar to that of any other retail store. The product being sold is the only difference. In order to not bore everybody with a list of standard operating procedures, I'll just briefly give an overview of day-to-day operations. An agent in charge and at least one other employee will arrive at the dispensary. The alarm is deactivated. Security equipment is checked to make sure it's in good working order. The dispensary is then inspected and deemed safe for other staff members to enter. The staff then makes the dispensary ready for business. Lights and computers are turned on. Floor is vacuumed and mopped. Product is moved from the vault to the sales floor. Currency is moved from the vault to the registers. A full inventory of all product is then conducted. A daily inventory of all product in the inventory is conducted. This means that every piece of inventory needs to be inspected, cataloged, and accounted for. If there are any discrepancies, the state must be notified and an investigation needs to be conducted to determine how and why the discrepancy exists. Purchasers are greeted at the main entrance, the public access area of the building by a security guard. The security guard, with the assistance of an ID scanner, validates that the purchaser is 21 years of age or older with a valid government ID. The purchaser is then allowed access to the limited access area. Within the limited access area, purchasers are encouraged to register with the dispensary. This is done in order to track their purchases and enroll them into a customer loyalty program. It should be noted, though, that this needs to be done voluntarily, as dispensaries are not allowed to collect personal identifiers without consent. Purchasers are then allowed to peruse the displays on the floor. Floor staff is always available to offer consultations and assist with product decisions, be it for medical or recreational use. Depending on the model of the dispensary, purchasers will then make their way to the retail counter, where they will pick out their products and a retail transaction will occur. Depending on whether or not the purchaser is enrolled in a loyalty program, an ID may be scanned by the point-of-sale system, pulling up the purchaser's account. Every item is scanned and accounted for before the transaction is complete and payment is accepted. After payment is accepted, the product is then rechecked and compared to the receipt, sealed in a bag and tendered to the purchaser. Under no circumstances is loitering of any kind permitted in or around the dispensary. Closing procedures. Closing procedures, like opening procedures, are similar to that of any other retail location. The dispensary is clean, computers are powered down, garbage is thrown out, and non-essential lights are turned off. All product is removed from its day storage location and returned to the vault. United States currency is counted and deposited into the vault. A final check is to make sure the dispensary is safe and security equipment is operational. The alarms are activated and the staff exits the facility and secures the property. The security of the staff and the public is a top priority at every dispensary, and because of this, there are multiple layers of security. I will address some of the general features without divulging too much information. Most dispensaries have 1 to 2 security personnel on site during business hours. Some dispensaries may opt to have 24-hour security personnel on premises. In general, 1 security guard will be placed at the main entrance in the public access area to check IDs of purchasers attempting to enter the location. The second guard will be located in the limited access area and monitor the cameras, purchasers, staff within the dispensary. The security system is comprised of cameras, door sensors, motion sensors, card readers, glass breaks, electronic and manual locking doors, shatterproof tinted window film, and human personnel. Security is inspected daily and tested regularly to make sure that it is in good working order. The IDFPR and the inspectors from the Illinois State Police have 24-hour access to the cameras within the dispensary. The video footage must be archived for a specific period of time, and if at any time security camera is down, the dispensary is not allowed to operate and must be closed until such time the system is operational. As I previously stated, purchasers must be 21 years age or older. Purchasers for recreational sales are broken down into 2 categories, Illinois residents and non-Illinois residents. This distinction determines their allotment and how much product they are allowed to purchase and possess. The dispensaries value their communities they serve. Dispensaries owners and staff are members of the community and pride themselves on working to improve their community. They do this in a multitude of ways. They host, participate, and sponsor community events. They donate to charitable organizations within the community, and they volunteer their time to better the community. I'm sure that if you allow dispensaries to operate within your jurisdiction, you will find them to be a valuable partner in working to improve the community. So thank you for your time today, and if you have any questions.
Thank you.
You guys have any questions?
Yeah, I do. This, since it's still federally illegal and it's an all-cash business, one of the benefits that a lot of these dispensaries tout is, that it's going to result in high-paying jobs for people that work at your facility. How do you pay those employees, and how do they contribute as far as their taxes go to the community?
Yeah, we have a payroll company. So we're paid by check and taxes are taken out of our checks.
Okay, so it's not all 1099, is that?
No.
Okay. Okay.
And is there any issue with banking for you guys? As I had read something that the banks are,
Knock on wood, nothing for us.
okay,
We do have a bank.
Yes, we do.
that's okay.
Not all dispensaries have banks, but we're fortunate enough to have a bank.
Have you guys by any chance been awarded an early adult use dispensing license?
Yes, we have.
Okay. How about a conditional adult use dispensing license?
We have the dual license. We're permitted to sell it January 1st, and then we're looking for another location to put our second location.
And, I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. Where's the first location at?
It's in Addison.
Addison? Okay.
When do you think you'd be open for business?
Our current location has a dual license, so we will be open January 1st for recreational as well. We're still looking for a home for the second location, which will be strictly recreational. So we haven't found the home yet. We were hoping to actually come in this community.
Thank you.
What are your annual sales up in Addison?
Kimberly, so you're going to keep all of those?
That's confidential.
At this point.
At this point, we can
Thanks,
discuss that in personal.
Okay.
Okay. Clerk Darian? Staff? Have any questions?
Kai S2, Chairman Glass.
He has two
Yeah, go ahead.
questions.
You mentioned that if you found a discrepancy, you had like a procedure that you went through. Is your facility shut down while that procedure is underway?
No, within a short period of time, the dispensary is allowed to try to find out where the discrepancy occurred before notifying the state. But any adjustments to our inventory need to be made through the state and documented.
Perfect. And then my other question, you mentioned there was kind of like a volunteer registry that your customers were able to kind of enlist in. Is that ever shared with other dispensaries, or is that strictly just for your one dispensary?
Well, currently, all the medical patients, their purchases are all tracked. With recreational, we're not allowed to collect any of their personal identifiers without their consent. So if they chose to be part of a loyalty program, then we would track their purchases. But if they didn't, we wouldn't have any way to track their purchases or know who any of the customers were.
But that's only for our dispensary.
And you would be the only one that used that loyalty
Correct.
program. You wouldn't share that with any other organization.
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Regarding, you indicated your preference is into being high visible locations, i.e. maybe commercial retail centers. I'm not familiar. Does the state regulate how you could display, typical retail, they use the storefronts to display, but I know these might be a different nature. The jewelry kind of layout is more for recreational. But is there state rules on that, or is that just preference on the dispensaries and how you would kind of utilize a storefront?
Yeah, I think it's preferential to the dispensaries. Currently, I know all the windows have to be tinted so that you can't see inside.
That's by the state?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you can't be displaying much.
Not from
No.
the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then most of the product displays that are inside are just empty packaging.
Right. Thank you.
That it? Any other questions?
Is that Kimberly?
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you guys mind waiting around in case any residents had questions? Thank you.
All right, next one. All right, next I want to invite Ray Klinsky up. If you have no PowerPoint, but if you have any comments you want to make or answer any questions, he's
I don't
available
have
for
any
it.
presentation at all. I mean, I
Yeah.
contacted you guys a while ago. We're applying for the adult dispensary license. We have a group. I am from Tinley Park. I don't know if you guys have any questions. They pretty much summed up everything.
The same question I asked the other gentleman. Have you been awarded an early adult use or adult use or conditional adult use?
No, nobody's been awarded except for people that prior have medical
Okay.
dispensaries.
So would you be applying strictly just for recreational then as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, there's no medical available any longer.
Okay,
It's just all recreational.
okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and then last we have Bill Taki and his team.
Hi, my name is Judy Taki, and I was an owner and operator of a medical cannabis dispensary down in Champaign, Illinois. And the first group did a really nice job in explaining the day-to-day and basic operations of a dispensary. I'd like to answer one of the trustees' questions regarding the display of cannabis products. By the rules, the product has to be in the restricted access area. So if you noticed, they talked about that there was 3 levels of access in a dispensary. You had the public access, you had the limited access, and then you had a highly restricted access. The cannabis has to be in the highly restricted access area until it is sold, and then it can leave the dispensary in a packaged container.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Wing, and we don't want to be repetitious with the previous presentation, but we're going to try to explain a few of the products being offered. Can we advance the slide? Because I think there's a lot of confusion over what is cannabis. So Judy?
And so I think what you see in the media a lot of times is what is depicted maybe in another state, where you will see a apothecary jar full of cannabis flower, where a bud tender might take out a selected bud with a pair of chopsticks for someone and put it in a bag and sell it that way. Everything that comes to a Illinois licensed dispensary, be it a medical dispensary or an adult use dispensary, will be prepackaged. It comes to the dispensary prepackaged, labeled. It is lab tested for purity. It is lab tested for the cannabinoids that are in it. You know the exact percentages of the cannabinoids that are in it. It can't be sold from a licensed cultivation center or other processor to a dispensary without it passing those lab tests. So types of products that you have sublingual mists, you have capsules, you can have edibles, you can have vape pens, you can have a topical, you can have what you would consider a shorty or a rolled, pre-rolled joint, or you can have transdermal patches. All of these are in child-resistant packaging. So just like you would get something from CVS or something from Walgreens Pharmacy, where it has a child-proof cap, it's the same way that you're going to buy something at a dispensary. And the same rules that apply to when you purchase alcohol, that everything has to be, when it leaves the store, nothing can be open. Nothing can be open in a car. When you purchase that product, it's in a sealed, stapled shut bag. That product should be put in your trunk until you come home. It is the responsibility of the person, the agent at the dispensary, to educate the purchaser of the rules in Illinois of how to handle that product up until it arrives at home and it is consumed by the individual that is 21 years and older for an adult use.
Now, Illinois now requires that all products sold of cannabis is grown in Illinois and processed in Illinois. So there is a high level of quality control that the legislators have put into place. Could you advance the slide? Just to give you a little history, there's 33 states that have legal medical marijuana, and 11 states have enacted recreation marijuana. Next slide, please. As we all know here, cannabis is, recreational cannabis is legal as of January 1st for people who are over 21. So there was a lot of concerns about minors getting access to it. The state has put strenuous laws and regulations in place to prohibit that.
And just to add to that, so government-issued photo IDs will be checked electronically. So before a person can enter the dispensary, those IDs are checked electronically.
In the Chicago, Elgin, Naperville corridor, it's kind of like a triangle almost, there's 47 licenses that will be awarded for recreational adult use. And this is the counties, there's 9 counties that consist of that. So even if Tinley Park chooses to opt in, there's no assurance that the state will award a license to be used here. Okay, next slide. But then there is questions of what you can regulate as a village and as a city. So you can regulate whether or not you're going to allow a dispensary to be within your city limits, or cultivation, or a processing plant. And you can dictate the number of dispensaries you're going to allow. And then you can decide whether or not you're going to impose the municipal cannabis retailer occupation tax on retail cannabis sales. And then you can also regulate it through zoning. There are some minimal standards by the state, but the municipality is allowed to put in their own zoning requirements. Next slide, please. Can you back it up one? Thank you. Then there's some confusion about the taxes, and we're going to try to clear up the taxes.
This is the sales tax that's collected. So right now for medical cannabis, it is like a prescription. It is there's a 1% tax on medical cannabis. For adult use cannabis, the state has enacted a tiered system. So depending on the THC content, that's the cannabinoid, that's the psychoactive cannabinoid, the state has made three different levels of taxes. So 10% on products with THC levels of less than 35%, 25%. A product that's got 25% cannabis has, or 25% tax, I'm sorry, on THC levels above 35%, and then 20% for any infused or edible types of products.
So this really boils down to that the municipality will also get whatever they would normally get from any regular sales tax. Plus, there's this additional 3% that you could choose to tax on the sales. And that is at your discretion to decide whether or not you will be taxing dispensaries located within your city limits. Next slide. The state has determined that they are going to spend 20% of the tax that they collect on cannabis to mental health service and substance abuse programs. Although every municipality in the state will receive whatever their fair share of it is, this is on a statewide basis. 10% is going to go to pay our unpaid state bills, 35% to the state general revenue fund, 2% to public education and safety campaigns, 8% to the local government distributed fund for the prevention and training of law enforcement, because there is concern, how do you tell if somebody's driving under the influence? So that is something that they want to help educate law enforcement more. And that is going to be a problem you have regardless whether or not you opt in or not. It is going to be an issue. And then there's 25% that will go to identified social equity programs. And that also would help the municipalities. Next slide, please. It's hard to forecast exactly what sales will be, but we can get an idea if we look at the statistics concerning the number of potential lawful consumers. So what is that going to amount to the village and municipality? Okay, we're going to jump ahead to, we have brought our security
firm.
expert. And I'm sure we were told that this was one of your main concerns that you wanted us to address is security. And who better to address it than the person who does it, outside company. And this is Ed Farrell.
Hi, my name is Ed Farrell. I do a lot of security consulting. My whole business is in the medical and recreational cannabis business. I provide services to multiple companies, dispensaries, cultivations, transporting. We transport currency to banks. We do a full gamut of services for clients in Illinois and other markets. I think probably a couple of the big things, takeaways you guys would know about is, first of all, I think most organizations are going to be a partnership with the community, especially where security is related. Most organizations meet with the chief of police or his designee and go over the security plans. We want your law enforcement to be comfortable with what we're proposing and doing in the organization. That's paramount to most organizations. We sit down with most community law enforcement organizations every 6 months and review the plan, just to make sure we're on point and we're meeting the expectations of the community and law enforcement. Secondarily, I think the big things the states want as a takeaway is there's no theft, loss, or diversion or unauthorized entry into the facility. Doing work in other states, I can tell you Illinois is the most regulated state in the nation. They've put great protocols in to prevent those things. The first group did a great job of describing kind of the day-to-day infrastructure, but just know it's a very multi-layered approach. Illinois is the only state I know that mandates you have security guards in your facilities. They mandate locked doors. They mandate if any of your security apparatus goes down, you have to shut your facility. They have stringent protocols. The first group talked about it. In instances of theft, loss, and diversion, you do not have to shut down, but there are stringent protocols of taking corrective action and reporting very quickly, which I think is important. And finally is the transparency with the community. A good community partner, obviously supporting the community back. But those, I think, are the big takeaways. I can tell you, I live in a community that has 3 medical dispensaries within 5 miles of my house, and you don't even know they're there. There have not been many incidents, or any incidents, major incidents in Illinois that I know of. There have been minor ones, insider theft, that type of stuff, but no major incidents. So from a safety and security point, it is pretty safe. Now, I can't guarantee there won't ever be an incident, but I think the protocols and the mitigation that they present in these organizations is pretty good.
Well, we thank you for your time and want to open it up for any questions you may have.
Sure, thank you for your presentation. I had some questions. Does the ISP, do they have 24/7 access to your cameras?
They do.
Yes, they do. And before our opening inspection, we have to give them the IP address.
And then, security, you said you have security guards in place?
As of January 1st, the state is mandating that all dispensaries have them. There are dispensaries that do have them now. Most of them do. But it's mandated by law as of January 1 to have it in there.
Okay,
And our dispensary had one. When it was an option not to, we had one.
okay.
And I can also say that being in Champaign, that we were a good corporate citizen, and there was times when the police would call us up asking us for our outside tapes to solve crimes that were not at our establishment, but down the road somewhere that maybe someone that they were looking to apprehend had driven past our place.
And how much staff do you have?
The state, for the dispensary,
Yes.
the state mandates that you can't open up without 2 people, but that would be too few of people. So you would have your security guard, you would have at least 1 agent in charge, and you would have a couple of other agent staff to help your patrons.
Do you believe you'd have 4, 5?
Oh, at least. And that would be depending on the size of your dispensary, too.
What would you be looking to do?
I think for ours, it would be around maybe 3,000 square feet for just the dispensary.
Something that's been bothering me is I'm not a fan if the board chose to support it, of it being in the open. I would prefer, I wouldn't want this, I don't want to drive down Harlem Avenue and first thing I see as I come into town is see a dispensary. With you being, with the security, I prefer if it passed that it's not in the open. What's your opinion, pros and cons, and from what you've dealt with? You have a smile, so you're waiting to talk.
I don't know that. Every town's a little bit different. Just like everything, there's a plus and a minus to it. Obviously, if it's in a open area on a main drag, you have great exposure and you do pretty well. There are dispensaries I know of that I do business with that are in business parks. They're hard to find, they're hard to locate. It took time for those businesses to take off. Again, I can tell you I live in a community with 5 of them from my house. I didn't know one was there until somebody told me it was there. They're pretty nondescript. The state is very good about limiting the advertising you can do. You can't advertise within so many feet of a school. You can't put them up in bus stops. The only thing you can put up is education materials and a sign that you're there. So it's somewhat unobtrusive. I would encourage you to look around. A lot of these dispensaries, some are on main drags, some aren't. I think the ones on the main drags do have an advantage, though, from a business standpoint.
Yeah, this is a big residential town. The revenue is secondary to families and stuff driving by. You go out and,
Completely
hey,
understand.
Dad, there's the store. I would prefer it be hidden. So, do you have any that you are in charge of or run for security that are hidden, that you've had no problems with the police, assisting or policing it with it not in the open?
No, and we haven't had any problems in any of our facilities.
For the ones that are kind of hidden away?
Both,
Okay.
neither. But yes, none for the hidden away.
And
Thank
can
you.
I also add, regarding advertising, the state has put in the rules about, you can't have a cannabis leaf. If you look at our logos, none of our logos are depicting any of that. All the dispensaries that I've seen, the glass is frosted. My dispensary was very nondescript. In fact, it was a medical cannabis dispensary, but it looked almost like a doctor's office.
Okay. Do you have any pictures that you could, because obviously we're not
Yeah.
voting on today.
Yeah.
Do you have stuff that you could send to Hannah that she could share with the board? Like the one where it had the currency exchange picture. I was not a fan of that at all. I've looked at some online and you'll see some that actually looks like an Apple store almost. So just kind of see where you guys are at, how you have done your stores.
We'll be happy to forward.
Great, thank you. Any,
And I would encourage anyone you can pull up a list of the medical cannabis dispensaries and you can take a drive-by and just see if you could, if you didn't know that that's what its purpose for business was, would you know that that was a place that was selling medical cannabis? And you might be surprised that you wouldn't even know.
Thank you. Trustee Burke, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I did not know Windy City was on Harlem. I've been past it 3 times, and I did not even know that the storefront was there in Harlem, on Harlem and Worth. It's very nondescript, and I've been to Denver, and the same thing there. You can't really even tell.
And one of the things we had heard was that the recommendation would be in a standalone building because of the odor, that it could be, if it was in a strip mall, that it could cause issues for.
Well, on a dispensary, there's no consumption on site, so there should be no odor. That may be for a processing.
You might get some within your vault room, but I can tell you that we were in a corporate building that we had an insurance agency that was down the, 2 doors down from us, and we had a chiropractor that was next door, and we never had any complaints.
Are you done? Trustee Mueller, do you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing from me at this time.
Thank you. Clerk Therian?
Not this time.
Trustee Brennan?
No, I mean, you guys kind of answered already. Mine was just a question on the zoning. You guys obviously prefer the main drag over an area, maybe an industrial area or whatnot, so, or at least your security may have answered that, but I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that, what you guys would prefer.
I would say parking is big.
Okay.
And ease to finding the location for those who are attending. You don't want people lost driving around forever. That's true no matter if you were selling widgets or cannabis.
Right, okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anything you want to ask, Kimberly?
I guess, the next steps is, whatever the decision may be, if the board decided to not opt out, then the immediate next steps would obviously be zoning. And we've kind of briefly talked a little bit about that. I've hopefully given you guys some ideas. And I don't know, Conley, I guess, with it going to effect in January 1, I think we still have the opportunity, even after that, to still create that zoning if we go for that. Because of the timing right now, it'd be difficult to get it on a plan commission.
That was the next thing I wanted to touch. So as far as this goes, thank you again for the presentations and coming out. Thanks, Donna and your staff, for doing the survey online. It's unfortunately, I think it just didn't reach as many people as I'm sure most of us were hoping to get. I'm not comfortable voting on the cannabis law at the next meeting, Dave, with what's been provided so far to the board. I think the staff has done a great job, but we're still missing, I think, a huge portion of the residents' input with the survey that was done online, and you did it in the newspapers. There are many people that still don't have internet or have had access to even seeing this. We've received that. Lisa sent all of us an email from someone else that couldn't participate in it. We could do one of 5 things. Whichever way the board would like to proceed is fine by me. 1, we could place it on the March ballot for resident opinion. 2, I think we could vote on it as is and decide if we want any restrictions. 3, we can just opt out. 4, make it very restrictive so nobody can obtain a license until we see how it's working for other towns. Or 5, we could do a mailer to all the residents, registered and non-registered, so all their voices are heard. We were elected by the residents to be their voice. And there's intelligent arguments either way you look at it on both sides. I just think we should let the residents decide how we're going to move forward with this. So I don't know if, Dave, if you want to touch on some ideas, and then maybe Pat can finish up.
And I think, yeah, you summarized, I think, the options well. I mean, clearly, you know, the board could decide to opt in tonight, you could decide to opt out, and you could, you know, and I think the village attorney could add to this, you could revisit that at a later date. And one option, and there's some towns that are doing, they're opting out and they're choosing, some of them are choosing to go to referendum to get additional information. Naperville, Wilmette, a couple other towns. As you said, we could certainly do another survey. There's a number of options for that. We could do, we had talked about this initially, a Survey Monkey type of thing that would notify all residents. You still have the potential though for people that can answer from multiple computers. Donna's gotten a rough quote if we wanted to do just a random survey of say, a statistically significant number of residents. That would cost us between $8,000 and $11,000, and that would get to about 3,000 people. Or as you say, you could do the referendum route, and you know, there's a couple towns that are doing it in March.
How many people would it get us, Dave?
I'm sorry?
How many people did you say it would get us if we did the survey to all the residents?
I think
Well, the quote that we have, again, when you do surveys, typically you get you shoot for a statistically significant amount. And Donna maybe can explain a little bit
She's
more.
behind you on your left.
Oh, okay, I'm like, where she is. It's 3,000, and you know you could do more. It's obviously going to be much more costly, but you're not going to see a statistically significant difference in opinion. The referendum you could do, I think. You know, the downside with the referendum is your people who vote obviously will have a say. And
But then, yeah, I'm concerned about the non-registered
yeah.
as well, people
So-
that have just moved in.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a few options to get additional data if you want to get it beyond what we already received. I mean, I think we do know in that current survey, there may have been certainly some folks that may have tried to vote multiple times. It's still a pretty significant difference between the supporters and the non-supporters. So whether that would have made a difference, I don't know. But again, I just would say in summary, if you're really uncertain, and Pat can add to this, you can opt out and revisit it. And so.
Wait, I'm sorry, one second. Yep. Didn't you say we had like 26,000 households that you would?
We do have 26.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to do 26, anything's possible. But again, the number we got for 3,000 was 8,000 to 11,000. So, you know, and that's basically doing the survey and tabulating the results for us. So, you know,
Okay.
obviously, the full town would be significantly more than that. So.
Okay.
Yeah, if the route that you guys want to go is to get more input, I would recommend that, you know, before the first of the year, this board pass, you know, a moratorium on the licenses while staff is, you know, while we work up the zoning and you guys get your additional information. What we don't want to have happen is it's legal, January 1. It's a legal use, and we don't want to have nothing on the books. And then you could face arguments that, well, I have a right to go on Harlem or Oak Park Avenue or whatever. So I think, you know, while if you need time to get more input, I would certainly recommend the moratorium route while you do that.
So that wouldn't require me to have to do anything to the zoning if we do a moratorium, right? That I would have to call
No,
it
that
up
would be,
now.
yeah, that would be a board decision.
Okay.
I mean, I might also recommend, though, if you're waiting for citizen input on whether you're going to opt out eventually, you know, perhaps we start down at the zoning and at least get the ball rolling, you know, whatever, if you want to go. If the information comes back from the residents that it's in favor, you probably want to get rolling pretty quickly, I would think, so. But again, the main thing we don't want, if time is what you need, we just don't want to put staff in a position where we don't have the tools to properly cite or not cite the establishments.
What does everyone else think?
I don't know, the cannabis law is here. I mean, there's only so much we can do about it. I think that, you know, it's been a polarizing subject for, you know, the town as a whole, and there's been much debate for and against it. I think, you know, hearing from the residents in a referendum would probably be the the best way to go. You know, if we opt out, I think we should take a wait and see approach and see how this affects other communities and what issues arise. You know, if we opt in, I think that we need to be careful and really strategic in the zoning on the issue and make sure we, you know, maximize our tax revenue. So, but I'd prefer to get, you know, resident input on the March ballot.
What's the deadline for Dave to give you direction for that?
Well, for a board pass, let's say it's an advisory referendum, it's either December 30th or first week or so of January. So it's coming soon. You'd have to probably have that on your next
Can you
meeting.
get us an exact date then?
Yeah, I could. But if that's the route you want to go, I'd be ready to vote on, you know, the language. And the language, you know, will be pretty standard. It's a pretty easy yes/no advisory referendum question. But if that's the route you want to go, I'd be ready for that at your next meeting.
Okay. Clerk Therian?
I'd be in favor of the referendum as well. Also opting out and waiting and seeing how other communities deal with the situation.
Okay. Trustee Mueller?
I'm more on the other side, it sounds like. I'm in favor of opting in with the restrictive zoning and going that route.
Trustee Galante?
I feel the same as Mike just said. I think we have tons of information. I mean, there's lots of information out there. There's many places that have already had this, and we can look and see how it's already being done. My concern is, I feel like if we're gonna do this, if there's 47 licenses to give out and we just sit back and wait, then we miss out. And that, you know, concerns me too. Because, I mean, did show that 68% or whatever it was. I mean, you can do as many surveys as you want. We only get so many people to respond, and it's a lot of money to keep doing that. I don't know what's gonna change come March. I just feel like we're pushing off a decision we should be making as a board. That's how I think.
I agree with Trustee Mueller and Trustee Galante that the window is open now for there's only 46 going to be allotted. We may not get one at all, and this discussion is null and void as far as that goes. I think we should opt in and figure the zoning. The referendum, we won't have enough time to do that, and I don't know what election that is, if people are going to come out and actually, you know, take the time to do that. I think that may be a skewed result as well.
Thanks. Trustee Burke? Yeah, again, I'm 100% for the letting the residents vote and put it on the ballot. So, how do you want to do that, Dave? You want to?
Trustee Watts, could I?
Yep. Go ahead.
I guess what I didn't hear is anybody say you want to opt out right now. I think it's either more time or start the zoning. So, I think regardless, before January 1, we'd probably need the moratorium. We're not going to have the zoning. If it was a unanimous, go get the zoning and go figure it out, we wouldn't be able to have the public hearings and the workshops and whatnot to have it up. So I think it's clear, so it's not opt out, so we can move forward kind of on parallel tracks there. And then you guys can ultimately decide if you want to go out to residents or not, start the zoning, but I'd say at your next meeting, we'd probably still have that moratorium until we figure out the zoning, or you guys go out for more, but your decision, obviously. But the moratorium, I think, needs to probably happen no matter what.
I would agree with that approach, and I don't usually like to speak for officials that aren't here, but I think your two that are not here would probably vote to opt out. So, you know, or at least I think go with the moratorium. So I think got 4.
Well, Pat, I was under the understanding that we can opt back in, but we can't.
I think everybody gets a little confused with opt-in, opt-out. So I think the important things to remember are, one, it's legal January 1 at 6 a.m. So you have within, I think it's 1 year of that effective date to officially opt out. If you do not opt, the only, I guess, consequence of that is if you don't opt out before January 1, 2021, you know, then if you ever wanted to go back and take it away, you'd have to have it by referendum. So you have time to do it. you could, I guess saying opt out of it, you know, you have plenty of time to opt out of it. So we wouldn't have to act next week to opt out. You could, you know, move forward, we could place the moratorium, that would still give you an opt-out option, that would give you, you know, the zoning option and give you more time to do what you need. And again, it would protect staff as, you know, we just don't want to be in a position where people come in and say, I have a right to be here, I have a right to, you know, so I really think, from what I'm hearing, the moratorium, and as you guys kind of grapple with this a little more, or goes right to zoning and they start their work, it sounds like that's the most efficient way to go.
I mean, a moratorium is a temporary opt-out.
Yeah, it's a temporary opt-out,
If
right.
at some point there's 4 votes to opt in, you can do that. I mean, right? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And again, I think people get confused when we talk about opt-ins and opt-outs. It's, you know, I think the direction here is that at a minimum, you need to, you know, you want to either zone it or you need some more resident input. So it's not definitely no. We can moratorium it. That lets the world know that we're working on it. We haven't made a final decision. We're working on it. And you have time for that. So.
Thanks, Pat.
What do you guys want to do?
Probably the moratorium, I guess. Or wait for them to
Well,
see where we're all at.
Yeah, it's just a temporary.
Yeah. Because they're not all here.
Yep. So is that good, Dave?
So is the majority comfortable with this moratorium?
Yeah, because then you
Even
could
those
just,
who-
and then if there's support for it, you could always lift it. If you opt out, then
okay.
it
Okay.
creates more hurdles.
And then perhaps you want staff to start working on what the zoning would look like and get that process rolling?
Yeah, I know in your memo, I gave you the most restrictive approach, choosing one district, limiting the distances from dispensary, potentially also limiting it from a residentially zoned district. Those are all approaches we can take.
And that's what the plan commission does. You know,
Yeah.
they should kind of vet that and get you recommendations.
Hey, Dave, could we do this different for public comment, for people maybe that have just come to speak to the, for dispensaries? Can we let them do that now, in case there are dispensaries, if they want to leave, then they have the option to
Yeah.
leave? Okay, so we're gonna open public comment for any questions for the dispensaries, for the cannabis law right now. Nothing else on the agenda. If anyone would care to ask him any questions.
If a storefront is frosted or tinted.
Can you come up to the microphone, sir?
If a storefront is frosted or tinted, do you really have to be in a high-profile area? And it would seem to me, even though you're not doing medical, you're only doing recreational, handicap access would be a primary concern possibly for someone who is trying to get off opioids or find a little bit of a change. So downtown Oak Park Avenue is not handicap acceptable for most people. But maybe a strip center or a different location might have better access handicap-wise. And to each of you, are you operating the restricted, the most limited centers, or are you at the jewelry, like the jewelry store or the currency exchange? What do you use mostly?
So, the medical cannabis dispensary that I had in Champaign, Illinois, that was, I want to say, sort of a hybrid, so we had,
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
Me?
Thanks. No, sure.
I'm sorry.
Just so you have it for the people that are home. You could stay up there with us, sir, in case you have another question.
I too, that was
Okay.
enough for me.
So for the medical cannabis dispensary that I had in Champaign, Illinois, it was sort of a hybrid. You walked into the vestibule and you had to hand the security person that was at the front desk your ID and your medical cannabis ID to be allowed into our public access area, which was the lobby.
We're not doing medical though.
You're right, we're not doing medical. So ours would be similar to that, that you would have to walk into a vestibule and again, underneath, if you want to call it like a currency exchange window, hand your IDs that would then be scanned, which then you would be buzzed into the public area. I can also tell you, handicap accessible is really high on our agenda, and I had a handicap door so that all the patients, and I think just for any retail business, that's a main priority to have something like that. And so having handicap spots where individuals can park and be accessible is very, very important. Any?
Do you have a preference in the site? You said you use a combination of both, but do you have the jewelry store or the currency exchange? That's sort of.
I think I know of one dispensary that is truly like the currency exchange model, and I can tell you for the patients that would come in, that's a little off-putting. I had patients, like, I can remember, you can have minor patients, so a mother came in for their child that had epilepsy. The child did not come, but that mother came with two of their sons that were older because she was a little bit intimidated coming into a medical cannabis dispensary, and she was very, very pleased that it looked like a medical office, and that made her feel, welcome. But, when you're selling adult use, you're going to have a little bit different tone, but it's not going to be what is depicted when they're trying to sell magazines, right?
Could you come up to the microphone, ma'am? Excuse me. Could you come up to the microphone, please, so everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Are you representing medical marijuana or recreational marijuana?
So I owned a medical cannabis dispensary that has since been sold, but we are applying for an adult use.
And that would be recreational?
That would be a recreational.
Do you have any statistics on the accident rates within 1 hour of marijuana use? So upon use and leaving your facility, how the accident rate?
So, by law, just like if you were to go to a liquor, you cannot consume the adult use cannabis in a vehicle. The law is extremely specific about the purchase.
However, it can be used, and then a vehicle can be entered, and within 1 hour, the accident rate goes up. Do you have those statistics?
For someone that's breaking the law?
No, for the recreational cannabis use.
I'm the lawyer for the organization, so you cannot consume on the premises. So if somebody is illegally consuming after they purchase it, and they cannot consume in their vehicle, there's no statistics that can address that. You're asking, on January 1st, it is legal. It is legal in the state. So it is not supposed to be consumed no matter where somebody purchases in a vehicle.
And are you aware if there is a sobriety test for cannabis now available to the police to test someone if there's an accident when they were driving?
They are working on that. And the, this.
So it does not exist. It does not exist at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, if you want to speak to it.
It's the same as we do now. If we suspect somebody's smoking marijuana, there's a vertical nystagmus that some officers are trained in, not all. If there's an accident, we'll go take blood.
And hold on, folks, so we're in public comment here, so if you want to address it to the board and
Can
then
I
maybe
address the board then?
Please address the board.
Okay, thank you. I've read an article that says within an hour of consumption of marijuana, the accident rate is highly increased. It is my feeling that persons that go to any marijuana store, especially if it's out of the way, will consume the marijuana and be driving in our town within that first 60 minutes, causing an increase in traffic accidents, putting the residents at risk. This is the holidays. I happened to read yesterday the November 17th Tinley Junction. Everybody that I'm talking to is overwhelmed with trying to keep up with holiday events right now. Nobody knows what's going on with this vote. Nobody's paying attention because everybody's preoccupied with Thanksgiving and Christmas. Because the few people that I've been able to connect with at the moment are very upset. I think you're getting a skewed survey, and I think that the people who want marijuana in this town are pushing it forward so that the people who are younger and do have access and are privy to an online survey, which was now closed by the time I found out about it, okay, you're getting a skewed result. That's my opinion. And yes, a lot of people don't have access to the internet, and okay, it is costly to survey the town, but I really think that you should let the residents have a voice before everybody gets very upset about a vote that you might make without proper public opinion. In addition, most towns around us are opting out. Orland's opting out, and most of the other towns are opting out. The only towns that were published as opting in are Joliet and Matson, which in my opinion, the crime rate is higher there. I don't want an increase in the crime rate in our town. I have a friend who used it years ago. I called her to ask her opinion because I really didn't have an opinion. She told me about marijuana brownies that she used to make. And I said, what is your feeling about this issue at the moment? And she said, I wouldn't go near the stuff today. She goes, it's much stronger. I wouldn't go anywhere near it. If people want to make money off of the use of marijuana and invest in the companies, don't let it happen in this town. Enough money will be made, and just as much money it'll be made if it's used in other towns and not in Tinley Park and our immediate surrounding areas. That's my opinion, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not to step up twice, but the greatest survey you could take is a vote by the Tinley Park residents, not an online survey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. First, and I'm not sure, and great explanation by everybody who was here. You probably will only hear me say this one time, that when it comes to the marijuana laws, the state of Illinois got it right. It may be the only thing the state of Illinois has gotten right. It is tracked from seed to sale. The Illinois State Police oversee the entire program, and they do it better than anyone. So I think if anybody is concerned about, when it's being transported or the misuse or the missing marijuana, ISP really, really does a nice job with it. So I don't think there's any concern. As far as the security within the buildings, it's all mandated in the bill. Somebody mentioned something about handicap accessible. It's also that I don't know how many of you have actually read the bill. It's long. I know Pat has. I've actually read it twice. But there's the provisions in there for handicap accessible into the dispensaries. My question now actually is for some of the dispensary people. I know that I believe you're the only medicinal, right? But you're going just for recreational?
You only have an option of going for recreational.
Right, you can, because there's no more medicinal left. So my question is, have you been granted that license?
Yes.
You've already been granted. So have you found a location here in Tinley Park that you're interested in?
We've seen a couple of spots that we thought would be interesting.
Okay.
Possibly the Aldi.
Love that location, by the way. So how soon, if let's say this was passed, how soon would you actually be operational?
Depends on the zoning. We'd be able to go 4 or 5 months.
Right, so it will be, because I know within
We're
the,
ready to go.
Right, but within the bill, you need inspections and numerous things. So we're not talking about if you found a location, because you would have to retrofit it, obviously, and do a lot of rehab, you still wouldn't be ready for maybe May? Maybe April?
Yeah, April.
So you're not talking about opening January 1st?
There's no way we do it.
Absolutely. No one would be able to open January 1st in Tinley Park. That's the point I wanted to make, is we don't have to, you're right, you don't have to rush. We have time, because no one has the capability to open a store on January 1st. My other question, somebody mentioned banking. I don't know if people are aware that it has just passed the House of Representatives to allow the dispensaries to actually be able to deposit fully into the banks. It has to go now to the Senate federally. But if that does pass, I'm sure those people back there are going to be smiling big time, because that makes life a lot easier. I know people are concerned about tracking as far as the monetary sales are concerned. They also all get logged with the state. The state is not going to allow a penny of tax to be lost on any sale. So all of that is tracked. So if anybody is wondering how do we know what our 3%, and if you pass that additional, or if you pass the additional 3% tax, how do we know how much is owed to us as a municipality? That is, again, tracked. Their system is phenomenal. So my other question is, and I know they don't want to disclose how much revenue they feel, or that they've already made, or that they feel they will make. I understand that, but my question to you is, so first year, I'm going to pick an imaginary figure of $5 million, okay? Do you expect by year 3 for that amount to go up? By year 5, over again, and that has to do with supply and demand, correct? Because I don't believe there's any cultivators at this point who most likely will not be able to keep up with the demand once it's open, because the demand will be so high. I also know that in the bill, it states that if you have a dual license, if I'm correct on this, you must maintain a 30-day supply in your medicinal dispensaries in order to make sure that the people who really need it and aren't just doing it for fun are able to purchase what's needed for them medically. So when you look at supply and demand, if you look historically at Colorado, Michigan, Canada, they have all run into the same problem. When they open up, the demand is so high that there's no way that they can keep up with supply. I'm going to bet that, especially for the medicinal at this point, do you guys own a production facility as well? Are you cultivators? No? But there are some cultivators who also produce, who also do their own production and their own sales. They have their own dispensaries. I know that and I've actually talked to a dispensary owner that has that. They are almost tripling their cultivation center because they know the demand is going to be so high that they need more space to grow the plants. So what that means is, yes, year 1, they may be we may be hearing that $5 million is what they're going to do in sales. But in fact, you have to think past that. Think past to year 3, year 5, when the cultivation is there and they are able to produce enough to keep up with demand. So the $5 million tax-wise for us may not seem like a lot, but long-term, it's going to be considerably higher down the road. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else care to address the cannabis companies or the board on the cannabis?
No. As a resident of Tinley too, I just wanted to correct a couple things. You guys need to decide if you're going to opt out or opt in with the new bill allows for on-site consumption. So as a city, you got to decide if you're going to allow that or not. I've been at probably about 12 different city meetings now. You guys are the last one on my agenda. So you got to decide that. And I also suggest that while you're doing that, you fit in to the same thing, the craft grow and then fusion, which will come out for license. The license comes out January 7th, so you might as well ball them up all together. The way the state would like to see those, the craft grow and the fusion and the dispensary in one spot to keep them together, but just some suggestions. But it's coming either way, so the good thing about having it in your town is you get to make the rules. You get to decide if it's sealed. It's not required to be sealed. You get to decide if it's on-site consumption. You get to decide if you want to allure some guys like these guys here that already have a dispensary. I suggest you don't go to 3% right away. I'm going to try to get a dispensary, so I'm saying that from two sides. And as a citizen, you don't want to scare people away. It's going to be limited. You're going to be lucky to get one. Lucky to get a dispensary in your town. There's only going to be so many.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you guys would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, feel free, or if you want to go. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Number 4, discuss amendments to personnel manual. Dave, take that one.
Hannah's going to do summary of that.
Thanks, Trustee Glatz. Switching gears. So, as Human Resources undergoes a comprehensive review of the village's personnel manual, at the September 10th Admin and Legal Committee, there were 4 immediate revisions to be discussed. At that committee, minor changes to holidays and tuition reimbursement that would impact current eligible staff were okayed, as well as vacation changes, but the vacation changes impacting eligible new hires. At that time, sick and disability was identified for additional discussion, so that's what we're bringing before you as a committee of the whole tonight. Just a little bit of background, I'm sure, as we're all familiar, the village's current sick and disability ordinance is a bit untraditional. It's pretty generous when it comes to sick and disability. So the village staff looked at a few different recommendations. The initial recommendation made at the September 10th Admin and Legal Committee was to allow eligible new hires to accrue sick time per pay period up to 80 hours or 10 days per anniversary year. Accrued time could accrue into a sick bank of up to 480 hours or 60 days. Again, at that Admin and Legal Committee, the direction was to come up with a few more options. So staff, looking at comparable communities, has come up with varying options for you all. First option being that you could keep a similar policy, grouping by years of service, however, capping full compensation at 12 weeks. Currently, the ordinance maxes out at 52 weeks, so that's significantly decreasing that. You can vary from that option and also, continue to group by years of service, but max it out at 5 weeks as well. Option 2, you could allow eligible employees to accrue 80 hours per year or 10 days beginning of date of hire. They could carry over their sick time into a bank, not to exceed 480 hours or 60 days. That, if you can see in Appendix A, is in line with what many other comparable communities traditionally do. You could vary that option, and you can decrease it to 64 hours per year or 8 days, and then allow sick leave to be carried over into a bank not to exceed 320 hours or 40 days. As a third option, you can allow eligible employees up to 10 sick days per calendar year. Days would not be accrued, and there would be no sick bank carryover. This would result in the need for employees then for long-term illnesses would have to apply for IMRF disability benefits that become effective after 30 days without pay. So those are some of the options. Again, keeping in mind that sick and disability, this would specifically only impact eligible new hires moving forward. It wouldn't impact current staff. And any changes down the road, we need to keep in mind our collective bargaining units as well.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Great job. Since I see Charles there, we have a couple police officers too waiting out there. to get sworn in. I'll just try and go through it quick. So if anyone has any suggestions, I like option 3. We'll start with Bill. Trustee Brennan?
I think, I think 10 days is sufficient. This would be with no bank, correct?
Correct, no bank.
Okay. One thing I discussed with Dave was, doing 10 days with a 10-day bank to get them to a 30-day threshold. So I don't know if that's something that you guys would want to entertain either, so.
Yeah,
But that's my opinion.
I would prefer, option 3 with no bank. Trustee Mueller, you still awake?
I am. I do like option 3 as well. I think that's very much in line with, what other companies and other villages do. So I'm in favor of option 3.
Great, thanks. And just Mike, touch real quick. You said a reason you guys stopped doing it at your place as well. If you could just touch that real quick.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a bit of abuse at my employee where folks were, I don't think it's an intentional thing or anything like that, but these accrued hours became a huge liability on the books, where if we had a couple key employees that had, in the realm of 300 hours that they had accrued, they were kind of just saying, I'm going to take off the next month and not work or whatever the time frames are. And unfortunately, it became a big risk kind of liability issue for our company. I know that one of the things that we try to do as a village is avoid those types of risks, and I think this is a step in that right direction.
Thanks, Mike. Trustee Galante?
Yeah, I like the same option.
3? Okay. Trustee Burt?
I agree with number 3. It's more current to what other businesses are doing.
Great. So, I'll make a motion then to go with option 3. Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries. Thanks, everybody. Number 5, discuss amendment to the municipal code entitled public comment. Pat, you want to take that one?
Sure, I can. Thank you, Trustee Glatz. I think you guys got a hard copy tonight of the proposed amendments to the public comment policy. Over the past couple weeks, we've been looking at the policy and reviewing the most recent decisions from the Attorney General's office to make sure that we're on board or we're in line with what the Attorney General's been saying and other case laws. So we are proposing some changes. I can go through them real quickly. In that first paragraph, just kind of putting forth a little bit why we do this policy. Obviously, this board is encouraging of citizens to come and speak during the public comment policy, but there's also a compelling interest in conducting business efficiently. This is the one area you as a board can conduct business, and the courts have recognized that as an interest. So the other, let me get into the actual kind of guidelines and rules. We have in here, we are now stating clearly that during special village board meetings or special commission or any kind of special meeting, that comments need to be germane to the items on the agenda. Again, we talked about that a few weeks ago. Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, you guys are not allowed to discuss things that are not on the agenda, so we feel that's a reasonable regulation. And then there was some discussion about, item E of the current policy that, has order and decorum. Obviously, order and decorum are important. We tried to flesh out a little bit some specifics on that. Obviously, we cannot regulate content. That would be violative of the First Amendment. So we don't believe we have any person who engages in threatening, disorderly behavior when addressing a board, commission, or committee shall be deemed out of order by the chairperson. Again, that goes along with the village's compelling interest in running an efficient meeting. So And we found that in a number of other town policies. Feel pretty solid on that one, so, but again, that doesn't mean, you can't, you're immune from criticism up here. That's not what that regulation is about. So I think this puts us in line with the most current cases and things like that, so I believe it's on your agenda later tonight.
Good. Any questions from the board?
Nope. Thanks, Pat.
I'll just say, Pat, I think this is really just codifying what we've been trying to accomplish as a board. So I really like that we're making this explicit and clear, especially on the special meetings. The special meetings are special. We need to have an opportunity for our residents to get to those special meetings. So if comments are being made from the public that don't apply to the agenda, that could be construed as being a little bit disingenuous by us, allowing those types of things when people may not have been given ample time to know about that particular meeting. So thanks for putting all this stuff together.
Yeah, and as we always say with policies like this, they're living, they're breathing, revisit them, make them better, tweak them. So we'll continue to do so.
Thanks, trustee Mueller. If there's nothing else, I'll make a motion to move to the board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 6, discuss sewer assessment contract. Dave, you want to take that real quick?
Sure.
Want the paper copy?
Yeah. So this was a contract that was awarded about a year and a half ago to Sewer Assessment Services of Schaumburg. The work has been completed. It was the low proposal. This was a situation where we did vary from the established practice of having this approved by the board. There's been several discussions with staff about this and making sure this doesn't happen in the future, but the work was completed. It was completed in a timely and accurate manner, and so it is something that we recommend forward for approval on the next agenda.
Thanks, Dave. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion.
You have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Number 7, discuss subaward agreement with the County of Cook, Homeland Security. Pat, you want to take that
Yeah,
one?
thanks, trustee Glatz. What this is a formality as part of the grant process. We were awarded this grant back in July, and as with any federal grant paperwork, it's pretty lengthy. Again, this is just a formality to get a resolution passed that we will be accepting the award from Cook County.
Thanks, Pat. Any questions?
Great
for-
work, Pat.
Any questions for Pat Carr? Nope.
Nope.
Thanks,
Okay.
Pat.
We have it's just formality, so you don't need a motion for anything, right?
I think it's on the agenda tonight, so.
It is on there, so.
Okay. You have a motion to move it to the board?
I'll make a motion.
You have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries. Number 8, discuss Cook County multi-jurisdictional all hazards mitigation plan. Pat
Thank
Carr,
you.
that's you again.
Again, this is another formality for updating our hazard mitigation program with Cook County. We've started this program back in 2011. It was formally adopted back in 2014. This is the 5-year update. And again, we're just updating the resolution to reflect that update in the overall plan.
Okay. Any questions for anyone? Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
You have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Thanks, Mike. Number 9, discuss paratransit agreement with PACE.
Before we get started on this one, Chairman Glatz, I know that the mayor's not here and this is run out of his office. Just in the interest of time, I'd certainly like his opinion on the different approaches that were provided in the backup material today. So I'd actually like to make a motion to postpone this to the December 17th meeting.
First and then discussion.
There's a motion to postpone. That needs a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just want to point out if that, Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, if we, I think the deadline for approving this, if we were going to approve the renewal, was the 17th. So.
You have to put it on the 17th. I think the problem is go ahead, Mike, I'll let you and Bill, I'll let you guys talk on this.
Homeland Security.
Was it written incorrectly?
I'm looking now.
What
Was it?
So I thought we had until December 31st to make a decision on this particular item.
I think, yeah, sure, okay.
So Trustee Mueller, the contract with the paratransit provider expires. They run on a January 1 to December 31st contract, but PACE is looks for a signed contract to be returned by that 17th date. I can work with them to see if that would, obviously just, going up to that deadline, we could arrange for that.
I'm sure they will with us. I can't imagine if we're voting.
So the contract itself expires on the 31st, but they're looking for a return contract.
We'll contact them now.
Yeah, to my point, it's just, this is a vital service that we've been providing for some of our neediest members here in the village and some surrounding villages. The mayor's been administrating this program for the last 2.5 years. I'd really like to hear his opinion firsthand on which of these approaches he likes.
Sure, completely understandable, Trustee Mueller, and just to, I guess, speak to that, I think the question is not, so we own the village bus, obviously, and the PACE bus. If they were not to renew it and they were to put a plan into motion to purchase a second vehicle within the fleet in-house, we would still operate our village bus, which would provide for the majority of the rides in any case, so the service would definitely not cease outright. It's just the question of what the village would like to do as far as continuing contractually with the one PACE bus that we rent from, or potentially looking to add another vehicle to the fleet. So either way, service will definitely not cease outright. There would still be, majority of the rides would definitely be able to be, there'd be coverage there between our village bus that we currently own and operate, as well as potentially using a van, perhaps a van that we have in the fleet to mitigate those in any interim period.
Thanks,
But your point is very well taken, obviously. It's a decision.
Yeah, so Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. So if I understand you correctly, since this comes out of the mayor's office, you're looking for him to give an opinion, and then we'll give advice and consent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We'll talk to PACE.
We can do that by 17.
Yeah, we'll talk to PACE.
Okay. Number 10, discuss ethics code revisions. Dave, do you want to go first, and we'll let Pat go?
Sure, yeah. I think as everyone is aware, I've managed a number of towns, and when I came to Tinley, I was kind of surprised to see that we had a separate economic disclosure statement in addition to what Cook County requires. And just, I know the officials here are familiar with it, but Cook County requires every year that village officials have to disclose essentially business they're doing with the local governments, any professional services they offer, capital assets over 5,000, government actions they're involved with, any business you're doing with any unit of local government, and any gifts or honorariums over 500. It's a very extensive process. And so I think for the village to also have a process is duplicative. And in my time here, I've seen, energies and costs spent on attorney's fees and other costs for doing this. So for me, I would recommend that we basically agree that we continue to adhere to the Cook County system, and that's what the requirement should be, and that the village officials shouldn't have to do anything beyond that. So.
Thanks, Dave. Pat, you had something you wanted to
Sure,
add?
yeah, and speaking of living, breathing documents, obviously the ethics code is one of those documents for sure. We're constantly looking at it, tweaking it, trying to make it better. You know, I agree with everything that Dave said about the duplicative nature of the disclosures. I know when I first came here, one of the first things I was tasked with was trying to clarify the disclosure process. I obviously didn't do a great job of it, and I don't think, you know, attorneys before that, 2 separate times, it's been confusing from day one. It's confused staff, it's confused elected officials, confused citizens, and this process, and it's not a Cook County requirement, it's actually a part of the state act that, you know, you have to file these with the counties, elected officials, candidates, and certain employees, mainly department heads and things like that. It's online, anybody has access to it. So the ordinance that we drafted for you removes all of the yearly disclosure form requirement sections of the ethics code and replaces it just with reference to the Illinois Ethics Act and the county requirements. So the ordinance is pretty easy.
Thanks. I'll disagree with you, Pat. I think you have done a good job, and so did, I think, Thomas Melody as well. It's just unfortunately, it's been the reason it was put in place, and now it's just been abused. Anyone else have anything to say?
I just think that, you know, it's costing our neighbors, you know, good tax money, so I think
Yeah,
this
we had one of them that was, what, like $60,000 for an ethics complaint?
Yeah.
And then we've had all this, we're well over 100,000.
Yeah, I think
It's cost us a cop.
It just costs us too much money.
Yeah.
And I will note the disclosure aspect of looking at this has been going on for a while. I know we were looking at it with Trustee Panito's administration committee. Kind of got stalled with the election and things like that, but, you know, again, living, breathing, we're constantly looking at these, and this is the proposed next.
Yeah, and it won't be fuzzy anymore. It'll be crystal clear. Anyone have anything to add to this?
I just have a question for Dave.
Yes.
Does our current ethics disclosure have anything above and beyond the Cook County one?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some things, yes, and frankly, there's some things in there that I would tell you some of our employees have expressed concern about, like disclosing where relatives work at. There's some things that are, some of them I understand why some of them are extreme, to be very honest.
And that was one of the
Yeah.
issues in,
Yeah.
you know, we tried to, again, in clarifying this and taking some things out and leaving some, you know, it's just messy, and with a system already in place, you know, we felt this was the most efficient way.
Yeah, we just had a recent ethics complaint. We had an employee's spouse where they're going on their LinkedIn and checking them and finding everything about them to put in a complaint, which for me was very concerning. You know, I felt horrible for the employee's spouse that was being done, but anyhow, thanks for the work you guys did on this. So, I'll make a motion to move this to the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Bill, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. 11, receive update on responsible bidder ordinance. Pat, is that yours?
Sure. Okay, so this is a proposed ordinance that would clarify certain aspects of what a responsible bidder is for public works contracts. It goes through, you know, defining which of the public works contracts it would apply to. And it goes through the bid submission requirements, you know, how to handle the incomplete submissions, times when low bids are not chosen, multiple low bids. You know, it kind of just clarifies the entire process. That was the goal, to spell it out. And I don't think we want to go through every section here, but happy to answer any questions. You know, obviously, Public Works, they bid out a lot of contracts, and so we're constantly trying to clarify that process.
Okay. Any questions? No. I have a motion to Move it to the board.
I'll make a motion.
Have a second? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 12, receive comments from the public.
Go ahead, you're first. Okay, my name is Rich Soga. I retired from Tinley Park Public Works, all right? And I seen 2 letters from Dave about something to do with the spousal insurance. And I want to know, I would like to know, how is that going to affect me and my wife?
I don't know your particular situation, I guess I have to.
Well, I'll give you my situation. My situation is I'm married. I retired 5 years ago. You pay half of my supplement. Now, I seen one letter that was given out, and I seen another letter that says you're gonna look at it. I don't know, I can't understand what this is all about. How is this gonna affect me? Evidently, you're discussing about insurance. My second question is, how come I was never notified? You sent these letters out to the employees, okay? How come as a retiree and if possible some change in my contributions to my insurance, how come I wasn't notified?
Well, 2 things. Right now, it's in the proposal stage, and we basically, we're going to be notifying the retirees in the particular situation you're talking about. The supplemental insurance is going to be, for the spouse, is going to be 100% of the cost. So that's really the change that we're talking about.
You know, this is a pretty good deal. You know, I worked here for 24 years and I retired. In the 24 years I worked here, I took 2 sick days, and you can look that up, okay? And John Urbanski can verify that. Kevin Workowski can verify that. So now, after you put all your time, never missed a snow call out in 24 years, now you're going to take my wife's insurance away. Thank you.
Well, pardon me for reading, but I don't want to go off track because I only have 6 minutes, and I wouldn't want to get fuzzy, Mr. Glatz. Very appropriate from the dais.
It's not fuzzy, it's just your time would be.
Item 11 of tonight's agenda asks for adoption of an ordinance that amends the yearly ethics disclosure requirements, supposedly according to Mr. Niemeyer, because they, quote, have been confusing to officials and employees. Usually a board agenda attaches a copy of any proposed ordinance. No copy was attached, and my request to get a copy was ignored. Also interesting is that agenda item is on motion of the village manager, not an elected official. But this isn't the first time I suggest that Mr. Niemeyer has been pressured into doing something for a trustee. A little bit of history. The ethics ordinance was originally passed in 1996 and hailed as a way, according to the Chicago Tribune article, to, quote, let the public know more about elected officials and potential conflicts of interest, unquote. In their 1997 article, the Chicago Tribune compared financial disclosure statements for 1996, 1997. They found a number of discrepancies. As an example, in 1996, the then mayor listed his employment at Brother Rice, his wife's employment, and his stint as a state legislator. But in 1997, he left the employment section blank. When the Tribune asked him, what's up with that? He said, well, I must have read it differently in 1997. 2014, residents had forgotten about disclosure statements, and apparently village officials had forgotten about how to fill them out as well. A review found that most elected and appointed officials simply did not report outside employment and financial interests. The most egregious example was a conflict of interest on the part of Brian Maher. While his law firm represented Panduit Corporation, Maher voted to approve hundreds of thousands of dollars in incentives when they moved to 80th Avenue. So to answer Trustee Mueller's question, there are requirements in this ordinance that was passed in 1996 to give the public information on potential conflicts of interest. Those are not contained in the county requirements. Those are not contained in the state requirements. Independent counsel in 2014 determined that the elected and appointed officials were again confused. But he did instruct one appointed official that if he was going to continue doing business with the village, he would have to report it the next year. When it was pointed out to when independent counsel, was made aware of the Tribune investigation, he decided he wasn't going to reopen his investigation, but not surprising, because the attorneys that are given these cases, they're in the business of defending municipalities and municipal officials. In 2015, that appointed official that was told to report his business, the one that the Tribune dubbed the Pizza King, purposely refused to make proper production. An ethics complaint was filed. That is the genesis of the board's, Mr. Pinito's board, that Mr. Conley talked about, legislating out the court complaint penalty provision in 2018. But even more insulting to the public, good government, and transparency was the board changing the language of the ordinance so that it was no longer an ethics violation to commit a dishonest act. All the amendments to the ethics ordinance that was passed in 1996 were done to benefit then sitting elected officials. And it seems every time we get a new board, new elected officials, everybody's confused again. I go back to 1997, I forgot to mention, the result of that was the then village attorney did a 30-page memo on how to fill out the ethics ordinance that they gave to the elected officials to be passed on to the elected officials. In 2017, Trustee Glatz must have been apparently confused, as independent counsel noted in a report of March 6, 2018. In summary, my investigation found that the village clerk received the complaint in August 2017 that Trustee Glatz's ethics statement was incomplete. The clerk's office contacted the village attorney and Trustee Glatz on the issue. Trustee Glatz consulted with the village attorney and filled out a second ethics disclosure, which was filed on August 29th of 2017. What's causing the supposed confusion? Even though the language hasn't changed, the requirements are still the same. They're very simple. It's three questions. Where do you work? Where do your spouses work? And where do your minor children work? That, with the assistance of counsel, is so confusing to elected officials. With all due respect, Dave, there's no confusion. It's an old, worn-out, and disingenuous excuse. The truth is that elected officials who leave out the information leave it out for a reason, just like Maher left it out. And that reason is the reason the ordinance was passed in 1996, to let the people of this village know where the potential conflict of interests are. So now you want to take it out. It's not surprising. And when you take it out, every person in this village, every voter in this village should know that you're taking it out for your own interests.
Your time is up.
Your own interests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to address
Don't be fuzzy.
the timing of the ordinances, I want to make sure that, the clerk's office, that was, due to the short week, and a couple, other issues going on, that was our, I'm not gonna say fault, but that was an attorney's issue. The clerk's office had the agenda out on time, everything was there. In fact, we were working on this up until today, so that's the reason they were not in the packet when we got them Wednesday or whenever we got them.
Great job.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. Maury, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Maury Lappin. I just want, Dave, can you give us clarification on the retirement insurance, what the proposal is? Because a lot of us are really confused.
We are, and I'm aware of that, so
Okay.
we are working on kind of a more detailed kind of question and answer that we'll be getting out shortly, but I think really will answer probably all the questions that have come up.
Do we know when this is going to come back to a vote then?
At this point, I don't know, but I will know shortly. So we're working on something that's gonna come out very soon. I think, about the answers.
All right.
So, okay.
All right.
Hi, John Hannenberg. Been here before, 169 24 Sayre. My back lot still has the dirt hill around it. Mike, I am not here to criticize. I'm just going to ask some questions. You and John, you were the only ones that actually came with me and looked at the dirt hill. It's 150 foot wide, 200 foot long, and 30 foot high. Is that a somewhat accurate description?
I don't remember about the height, but it's extremely,
It's not a little hill.
no.
Okay. You had me meet you at the Hanover Place Apartments parking lot, and you were walked up on the mound. Is that what you thought I was talking about when I complained about the dirt hill? Was that mounded area behind Hanover Place Apartments?
I thought you wanted to look at that part of the hill first and walk in.
Okay.
You wanted to start from the other side and
Yeah,
walk
yeah,
out.
you can't walk through all the.
I did.
Yeah, okay. Because it seems to be some village confusion. I had a letter from, in response to a letter to Kimberly, to emails from Brad Bettenhausen, treasurer, and he says that the dirt that was used was spoils and it was mounded neatly and it's used for water detention. Well, that is the mound that you and I walked behind Hanover Place Apartments. That is not the mound that's next to my property, though. Mine is strictly construction spoils. In fact, as I told you, there's a refrigerator buried in there because my next door neighbor saw the cat pick it up and bury it and fill it in. So it's not just construction spoils, and it has been there for 14 years now. When I applied for FOIA requests, I got a letter from the FOIA manager, and she gave me a map, and she outlined what actually Hanover Place Apartments' actual footprint was when they developed and asked for their proposal. Well, none of their backlots are contained in that proposal of their development. But they did build that mound, so somebody built it. You can't work on somebody else's property when you're developing a piece in the front. If this is your lot, you work on your lot. If that's somebody else's, that's somebody else's. So how did they build that mound? So how did they build the dirt hill? And how does it stay there? And since then, they say this property no longer belongs to Hanover Place, but it belongs to the people that built Hanover Place, the O'Malley family, in a trust fund. And it's not being removed, it's not being changed. And if they didn't own it, how did they create the dirt hill? Now, the village approved everything they did, gave them occupancy permit, and things are moving too slow for me. The county is taxing me $140,000 on a vacant piece of land that's landlocked with no utilities. I can't afford $10,000 a year in taxes. My option is to give it up or donate it to Tinley Park as a park district, since there are no parks in the area. I don't want to donate it. You won't buy it. No one will buy it. No one has to buy it. Someone will come in and buy it for taxes. Probably the people that still own the land behind Hanover Place Apartments, and then they'll find something to do with it. Probably spread the dirt hill on it. But I got to get some relief here. I send emails to Ms. Clark, and I don't get response. I know I'm an abrupt person. I'm not as professional. My kids are all teachers. They listen to me talk and say, "You can't talk to people like that, Dad." And I understand that. And I'm raised a little differently than my kids. But I need some relief and I need some action. The debris hill doesn't belong there, and it's got to go. And the people who are taxing that land for the county have deemed that as a 1.00 classification. It used to be the same level ground as my ground until they put the dirt hill on it. And now it's not. But they're still getting tax relief on that property as if it is water detention. Well, you can't have water detention on a 30-foot high hill. All it does is shed water to my property and shed water in the other direction. I will send emails to Mike, and Mike, I think, is the other person, Mike Mueller, who are on that board, and I'm going to start involving more people. Every email I send to Kimberly now, I also send to Pat. I hope you've been getting them. I'm trying to be nice, but I'm having a hard time being nice.
I completely understand where you're coming from, and that's, I wasn't here 14 years ago, so unfortunately, I don't know too much about what transpired back then, and that's why John and I went out there to take a look at it ourselves.
I appreciate that, too.
And I agree with you. If it was in my backyard, I would not be happy about it either.
Well,
and so that's why I went and spoke to Kimberly, and trust me when I say it, Kimberly is doing everything she can. It's unfortunate, like you just said, now it's in a trust. She has put, you may not be getting results, but unfortunately, she's contacting people that don't live in the state anymore, some that do. She is doing everything she possibly can for you to try and alleviate that problem.
I appreciate
It's unfortunately, it's a slow process.
I'm not,
I
I'm not
can
pointing
tell you with a
fingers at
certainty,
anybody.
Kimberly has done everything so far that she can. She's moving. It's unfortunately, it's not at your pace, but Kimberly has made a lot of phone calls, put a lot of time into it, trying to get people from other places to talk and find out who's who. One guy, says, "Oh, it's not mine," and then Kimberly proves that he's wrong. It is. So she is working on it. It's not at any fault of hers.
The man who's paying the taxes on that property, Mr. Sullivan, who I got his name off the tax roll, owns another piece of property in Tinley Park, which I just saw as I'm scanning through the newspaper on the tax rolls. His property claims no garage. He has 2 3-car garages and a concrete slab with one of those shipping containers on it. And he has, if he took a permit out to build on that property, I'm surprised that those garages aren't on the tax roll and he's not paying tax on them. So it goes a little deeper than just who owns it. There's a little bit, not from the board, but I think from the county, someone's fudging numbers.
Trustee Watts, I've been on a lot of the emails myself. It's a complicated ownership situation, to say the least. I'd agree with you that Kimberly's gone above and beyond. She's gotten people on airplanes into this village hall. There are some limitations what we can do as a village. The county aspect, maybe we can go that route, but we don't make the assessments. We don't do that. But if you think there's a route there, I don't.
Now it's in violation of village code.
I understand that.
That's where we have to go. That's like the next.
I understand that, but violations of the village code, tickets and things, so there's processes. We're trying to get, she's gotten people on airplanes and gotten them into this village hall. It's above and beyond. So we'll continue to work with you. I understand it's not the speed you'd like it. If you have ideas, we're all ears.
Good evening. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not there. I'll try to be brief. My name's Chris Halper. I've never spoke here before, but I am born and raised resident of Tinley Park, and I still live here. I'm a film and television producer and director for over 25 years. My credits are with CBS, Disney, ESPN, Major League Baseball, NBA. I've worked for Discover Card, BMW, to name a few. I just didn't want to leave any out for Eberhard there, so sorry about that. With that said, I'm not a public speaker, so I hope you bear with my rambling on notes here. I didn't come here to share who I am and what I do, but what I am doing currently does have an effect on Tinley Park, mostly the state, not the village. But I came here to dispel the rumors that, yes, I am in fact filming a documentary about the Tinley Park Mental Institution facility and the problems. Today we have over about 10 hours of footage at the property. Most, if not all of you, have heard the rumors, the disturbing stuff that goes on there. For lack of better words, it's frightening. And most of that will be covered in the documentary. The main purpose of coming here this evening was to express my concerns that we found while filming at the aforementioned facility. The topic concerned is, it's frightening. I don't know how to express it any better than that. I'm actually kind of afraid to admit some of the stuff that goes on there. Yes, we have been, wait, I have to skip that part. Most of what we've been uncovered is going to be in our documentary. But there is one thing that as a resident, as a responsible producer, and it's something that forced me here tonight. I have to speak out I have to do it now rather than later, and then now rather than using it as a chapter in my documentary. There is no security at this facility, ladies and gentlemen, none. Yes, there's rumors of the state of Illinois paying upwards of $400,000 a year to have a security company there. Listen, they're not there. My film crew, we've been on the facility 25 times looking for security. We couldn't find it, day and night. We obeyed the signs. As soon as we couldn't find security, we left. So we tried to find other avenues of getting on the property legally to do our filming. We made contact with the security firm, Allied Universal, which I walked into their office, and they immediately, without asking me who I was, what I did, gave me security information about that property. When the security force is there and when they're not, when we can go out there with our cameras. This is concerning as a citizen of Tinley Park because our children can go out there at any time. Our residents can go out there at any time. And, with the rumors that the dangers that are out there and what we've uncovered, I think dispensaries should be a little bit back in the back burner of our concerns up here. At another time, we secured an unmonitored, uncensored 3-hour tour of the facility. My film crew paid $25 for this. $25 to get a film crew on the Tinley Park Mental Institution property. Is anybody concerned yet? I think we ought to be. I had no problem all day long. The security forces sat right there in front and allowed my film crew to do anything we want. Go inside the buildings, there's tunnels, there's open 8-foot gates. And on that day, there was what they called, let me get this right, a airsoft pellet tournament. 100 kids running around, unsupervised, no problem. Now, I'm not sure, we haven't learned if that airsoft tournament had legal permits to be on that property, but I can probably guarantee you that that permit didn't include 12 photographers and another film crew paying $25 to get on that property. This is pretty disturbing. I hope this is kind of a wake-up call for all of us. I mean, if we get a dispensary in this town, that's great. It's going to do great business because what we've uncovered, our citizens are going to be going to those dispensaries to kind of get rid of the pains of having cancer, not for recreation. That's going to be a problem. We have 2 schools that are upwind from that facility. We have our police officers who have a station that's on the property within, an earshot of the place. These chemicals are real. The asbestos is real. Anyway, in closing, I don't know what else more I could say. I apologize for rambling, but I'm going forward with this documentary, and not in hopes that it's going to cast any aspersions on anybody in Tinley Park. This is my town, and I love it. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the security of Tinley Park because this is a state-owned property. This is something that they would like to probably help with, but they can't. This is our governor's issue. This is a mess that Pritzker needs to fix. And our village needs to start moving forward with this. Not with dispensaries. I mean, I have no opinion one way or another for dispensaries, but I think I have an opinion one way or another for our community and the health of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Helper, for
Thank
all you're
you.
doing.
Good evening. Just really quickly concerning Chris and IEPA and all of that, it is in process. And Dave and I talked today. They're working on it. That's all I know at this point.
Laura, sorry. Laura, can you start there?
Clap.
That's okay.
Just a quick question. What is, for the new ethics ordinance, what is the difference between the current one and what you're looking at now?
The difference would be, there are a number of, the village code required additional disclosures to be filed with the village. That's separate from what everybody up here has to file with the county and through the state. And those disclosures were broken down into financial, real estate, and there might have been 5 or 6 different things under that umbrella. So the additional village disclosures are now being repealed, and the disclosure requirement for the village is that of the state of Illinois and Cook County and many of the other municipalities. So it's getting rid of what the village code had above and beyond what is required by the State Ethics Act and Cook County Act. So there'll still be disclosures, they're available online, and so it's not eliminating any and all disclosures, it's eliminating, and I think Mr. Everard pointed out what was codified in 1996. Those specific disclosures that were above and beyond are now, if approved, would now be eliminated.
Okay, so does the state and/or the county one include not only where that elected official or staff, where they work, where their spouses work, where their children work?
I don't think it's where their children work.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. It's a general, oh gosh, but.
So it's just for staff, so they don't ask where your spouse works or where your children work?
County
No.
doesn't. You have to disclose, like, if you offer professional services.
Correct.
Right, so any
But it
conflict as
doesn't
far
get into-
as,
It doesn't get into family.
No.
okay,
And there's
and,
been some concern from some of our employees, particularly in public.
absolutely. And in the state as well, it has the same as the
Yes.
county does?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I certainly hope you go with the new one. I don't think it's fair that, although accountability, transparency is a great thing, I don't think it's fair that it gives someone the opportunity to terrorize the village officials, their families, and staff by sending horrible, hateful, lie-filled letters to their employers. You're opening up and giving people the ability to abuse it. When, especially elected officials, it's hard to find people who are willing to run because they're opening themselves up to so many abuses by very specific people. And I mean, we can go into all of the ethics complaints that have been filed and failed. Every one has failed. But yet, we, the taxpayers, have to keep paying for that. It's time to make that change. Thank you. I for one, appreciate it, and I'm sure all of you will as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Glatz, I did just want to clarify before we move on from it that we keep saying disclosures, that there's 2 parts of the ethics ordinance. There are still disclosures that board members, you'll be required to make, when there's a conflict of interest or the appearance of impropriety. We've done that various times. That's the public disclosure, that stays. So the only disclosures we're talking about is the yearly filing. So there is still a check on, conflicts and things like that. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. there any other public comment?
I just have a question, or actually kind of seeing where this is going with regards to the cannabis. I saw the results are in. My concern is a number of people that I know I talked to, they weren't even aware it was out there. It was not publicized at all. You only got a little over 2,700 responses, of which 94% of those were for the village. So now you're at 2,500. I looked it up. We have about 60,000 residents. That's not even 4%. That is horrible. I think you need to make this a referendum. I don't think you should just go about and do it on 2,500 people. So I would really hope that you would consider that before you take this to a vote.
Ma'am, earlier we discussed this before you arrived.
Okay.
And I asked to put it on the March ballot, so all the residents can participate in it. But for now, what they're gonna do until they figure it out is we're gonna do a moratorium on it so that no licenses can come.
Terrific, thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome, because we agree. I mean, marketing did a great job with it. It's unfortunate the numbers didn't come back what everyone was hoping for.
And I can tell you, I've asked a few people that I know, and I said, oh, make sure you go on there, and they're like, what are you talking about? So no one knew. So I don't know if they don't read the paper, I don't know what the problem was, but they were not aware of it. It was not publicized as much as it should have been. Either you should have sent out a letter, send it with the water bill, send it with something to let people know.
And that's what we were discussing, on how we could find another way to, I asked Dave to find out about mailing it to every resident, whether they're registered or not. Because if you do it on a ballot, the part I struggle with that is we're gonna miss the people that aren't registered or just newly
Just moved in or something.
Yeah, and
yes.
it's not fair to them as well, but unfortunately, the price, I think Dave came, just 3,000 people was what? How much, 8,000 or 11,000 you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it'd be $70,000, so.
Yeah.
We have to come up with a better way, like the water bill or something like that, or, talking about put it on the ballot in March. So there's,
Or you know how the police send out the blast email when there's a problem? Can you send out, or the call rather, can you send it out via the call system? At least for some of those. I don't know how many residents are on that call system.
That's the
Because
problem.
sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But I know other family members of mine that live in Tinley get it, so I don't know if that's another.
so what'll happen with that, I'm guessing, Pat can probably answer this better than I can, but I'm guessing that maybe if you're not registered or listed to be on that, then we'll have the other side of this coin where people say, well, they didn't get that phone call. So trying to find something that will cover everyone, but Pat can answer that better.
Mike, just to add to that is that, we did discuss, and I think there was a concerted effort just to make sure that the public was aware. I think it was in the community email. I believe there was on the community Facebook page. They did post it. As a committee, we were trying to, without costing the village a ton of money, as far as tax dollars go, on the survey, we were trying to get cast as wide of a net as we could, without costing us a huge tax burden. So that was kind of what the idea was. But, and we're also, I think we've spoken about this at 3 or 4 meetings now too. So I think that was part of the effort of that. But I think marketing did do a great job on that. So, and there was a low turnout. So, which is why I think, you're seeing a lot of, questions from here as the board, why we want to go to referendum for it, so, to get even more input.
Okay, no, I appreciate it,
You're welcome.
thank you.
Anyone else care to address the board? Let the record reflect there are none. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We're gonna